Silence creator of Healing is Possible, here today with special guest and a dear friend and mentor of mine, Heather Burgett. She's my public relations coach, but a master in visibility and in taking healing even into business as a spiritual path. In the Healing is Possible hot seat, every week we go live and we bring in a special guest that either is doing breakthrough coaching that we can all heal as we watch them, or I'm bringing in influencers like Heather to share their secrets to healing with all of you. Heather, welcome to the hot seat.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's great to see you and be here to meet your community that I've been hearing so much about this past year. So hello.
Yeah. Well, you've been instrumental really in the development and creation of this Healing is Possible community. Let's just dive right in. Tell us about your path with healing and what does healing mean to you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a good question. I think healing is a very personal thing and experience for every single person because no two healing paths ever look the same. Just like we're so unique as human beings, our healing journey in life is completely unique to us. So I could talk about this stuff all day long. I'm really excited to dig into this juicy stuff with you. As you know, I do teach visibility and publicity, but we always start with the alignment piece because I have a background in the healing arts. And I've always been on a spiritual path and loved things like the metaphysical, mind, body, spirit connection. And, it's so foundational to having a successful business that you know how to be functioning in the world as a healed person. And if you're not, and you're going through struggles, then how do you deal with those, right? So that's, each person has their own journey, their own dark night of the soul, and how to overcome those, whether it's a health crisis or the things that come up. I mean, you obviously know very personally this experience as well. And so, yeah, I go way back to being a kid where I used to get very sick. And I think it was probably the emotional impact of going through a divorce at a very young age. And no one could understand why I was always getting so sick. And then it led to, in college, being diagnosed with Epstein-Barr and going through a healing crisis there. And then coming to Hollywood and getting really sick, kind of working myself to the bone and having a major healing crisis there. And this is years and years ago. So, through those journeys, I had to learn so much about myself, my body, how to overcome them. And then I actually ended up working in the healing arts after that. So I'd be happy to, any questions or however you want to dig into any of these areas, I'd love to share.
Well, thank you for sharing with us that you've personally had to experience healing through physical dis-ease. And what would you say? I mean, in the hot seat, I always put people on the spot. I do ask hard questions and let's just see where we go. But what would you say are the key factors to healing and what determines whether or not a person is healed? Because in my experience, the healing journey is one that's infinite and it's a journey that we can take deeper and deeper and deeper. I don't believe it's necessarily a finish line that we arrive at, but I do think that we can be, living in a way where we don't need life to be different. Healing is possible in terms of emotionally, are we aligned? So just talk to us about what do people need to know about healing? What does it mean to be a healed person? And then I'd love for you to dig into the alignment piece.
Yeah. And just to back up a bit. Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. So while we want to be, functioning the world as healed as possible, it is a lifelong journey of growth. And as human beings, there's always going to be something on the mind, body, spirit level to overcome. So I look at all of those things. And when we're talking more on the mind, spirit level, emotional level, those are actually the best places to catch it because it's when it isn't dealt with that it sits and gets into the physical If you look at Chinese medicine, they associate, it's a very holistic view on, it's so interesting. Their medicine is not different from their life philosophy. Like if you think of yin and yang and all of that, like it's all, their entire philosophy is that we are holistic beings and that nothing is separate. So, it's really about being able to know that this is just a part of our makeup, who we are. And, so wait, okay, redirect me. I'm like going off on like 12 tangents now.
I love it. And so I just want to know, what do you want people to know about like the healing journey? What are the key points? And what you're saying about kind of catching, the offness, whatever it is that might feel off or be off at that mind level, emotional level first before it permeates, I think is really powerful. What else do you want people to know just about healing in general? And then I'd love for you to dive into alignment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think really that piece is maybe the biggest takeaway that I would love to bring today for anyone that might be, experiencing some of this or wondering about it. And so I can go back to my own healing journey where, as a younger woman, I was, working myself really hard. I mean, I had a first incident in college where I was actually diagnosed with Epstein-Barr, and my mother literally thought that I was going to die. Nobody knew what was wrong with me. I was very, very sick, bedridden in college, had to stay in my dorm room for like 3 months in my bed. Like it was terrible. I did go home for a bit, but then ended up back at school trying to make it work. And thankfully I was like, my dorm was right up the hill from the medical center. And I swear I was there, when I wasn't in bed, I was down there, and they actually wrote up my case in a medical journal because they were so baffled by whatever I was experiencing. So, that was, incredibly scary and traumatic. And then going to the next phase of like a different kind of a healing crisis was when I actually probably did it more to myself when I was working in Hollywood, where I was working 70, 80-hour weeks in a very stressful, toxic environment. I had put myself in that position. So, we're always part of the equation, right? And, I had allowed myself to get to the point where I was getting very sick and had to get support. It's a great time to talk about this as well, because I think tomorrow is National Autoimmune and Fibromyalgia Awareness Day and chronic fatigue. So I was borderline fibromyalgia at that time. And I've always kind of struggled with a little bit of chronic fatigue. So, it's like, this can be a lifelong journey. Now, they told me back then that this is something you'll always have. You'll never be able to be healed from it, the Epstein-Barr especially. And years ago, I got tested again. They couldn't find it in my system. So now there are many, many strains. So it's not saying that maybe there's not still something there, because I know that I personally have always struggled with energy levels, maybe a little more than other people. So, knowing, it's kind of like knowing yourself, knowing your limits, right? Being in touch with your body. And so now it's like, I really know the signs of like, okay, when am I starting to get to that point where things are not going to go well? So, as I said, with the mental, so if you look at how sickness or disease comes in, it starts out in the ethers, right? Out wherever. Then you have a thought, something comes in as an idea, and then you feel that idea in your body. So maybe it's anger, right? So you're feeling that emotion in your body and that anger. Now, if we don't release that or process it, and we're holding and living in a state of anger or whatever that emotion is, and this goes back to the Chinese medicine and how they look at the whole health system, is they will say that, when you have liver cancer, that is stored anger. So being able to know that, wow, and if you're really interested in kind of how these things are associated, I would recommend to anybody to read the book by Carolyn Mace called Anatomy of the Spirit. That book changed my life at that time when I needed guidance and help and understanding of what was happening, and realizing how much these other things outside of me and, the actual connection between mind, body, spirit, like how that was actually working. So, being able to know, okay, I've got some stresses in my life right now. I know this isn't going to go down a good path. if I don't get a handle on some of these things, because I've seen what can happen before. So we learn to catch ourselves, and, either there's two things you can do. You've either got to remove, get rid of that toxic, or, whatever the situation is, the external stressor that's happening, or you've got to remove yourself from the situation. So a lot of times it can be toxic relationships, right? Those can do a number on our physical health. So I think just knowing yourself, knowing your limits, knowing when you're starting to feel a little bit off. And I forget the name of the famous quote, but the guy that talks about truly the only illness is stress. So knowing that self-care is like one of the number one things. And today, of course, we're talking about this as it's tied into your business. So, and you know how much I talk about the alignment piece, the self-care piece, because we're of no use to anyone if we're not in a good state ourselves, if we're not feeling good. And that's your number one barometer. Are you feeling good today? Do you feel good in your body? You don't need anyone else. You don't need a doctor or anyone else to tell you that. That's something you can, feel into for yourself. And knowing also that not every day is going to be a butterflies and rainbows day, like on whether it's the mental or emotional level. I will say yesterday was a really intense day. We have a powerful new moon today. And I was like, whoa, like kind of going through the funk. And what I often say is, it's how we react to those things and having the tools to be resourced so that the ego mind, so that we don't go down a storyline, right? Because the ego mind is always trying to attach a story to things. And that's where then they become emotional. And then we hold these emotions and then we create this whole story and we make ourselves sick. So being able to be in the present moment, find joy, gratitude, relaxation, calm your nervous system. I took a hot Epsom salt bath. I snuggled with my fur babies and I just relaxed and I just let myself, okay, I'm feeling the funk today. So you've just got to feel it and let it move through you. We're not meant to hold on to these things, these emotions. And I think that's the biggest mistake that a lot of people make is they start to identify with the story and the feeling, and then they hold it and they carry it and it becomes a pattern. It becomes part of their makeup.
Or identifying as sick. I mean, I think that's one of the things that saved my life is I never identified as sick or dying. And I believe with all my heart that we have control over that emotional clearing and that alignment of staying emotionally clear. I don't think people cause their illness, but we do have control over whether or not we're paying attention to the emotional work, the heart work that we have access to in any given moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's a little bit of everything, right? Like we're, often put in situations where, our system ends up trying to protect itself. So, that can be one thing that comes up is, whatever the stress is for your body, that your body goes into the fight or flight. And I know you had your, extremely powerful healing journey as well. So yeah, it's, and that's why I, say now, and you've known me for a while now, and I don't ever talk about being sick or having an autoimmune issue or chronic fatigue or Epstein.
I'm learning more about you today that I had no idea about. I love it.
Yeah. And you've known me at least a year plus now or around there. So like you said, I don't identify with that and I just know how to take care of myself, but I don't run around telling a story about that. Right. Or if I do, it's in this kind of a way where hopefully it's going to help someone else deal with their story or things that are coming up in their health for them to know how you can approach them. So, people on the outside looking in would probably say, oh my gosh, we had no idea. And I have people say to me oh, how do you do so much? And for me, from my perspective, I always feel like I'm doing way less than other people because my energy levels aren't always as high as some of, other people that I know that are total energizer bunnies. But we all just have to do what we can with what we've got from where we are, and it's your own journey, and be okay with that. And just know that that's your personal journey.
Right, because the alternative is fighting it. So, what you're also a master at is visibility. So, how does visibility apply to healing? And then let's take all of this conversation around healing into business. How do people heal in business? But first, let's address visibility.
So, in terms of
Just
what visibility is?
as a pathway to healing, how is being more visible part of healing?
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you know, when we step into higher visibility, all my clients know this. I know this because I've done it more since the past 4 or so years, I started my online business, is it actually requires us stretching ourselves, our comfort zones, our containers, because we're getting ready to hold more and be more in the world. And oh my God, it is so uncomfortable. It turns you inside out. And their fears come up, limiting beliefs come up. And anytime something comes up in your life for you to look at, especially in relationships, that mirror, it's always about you. It's never about the business. It's never about the person. It's about the thing in you that is coming up to be healed and looked at and dealt with. And so in your business, hello, if you have chosen your business as a spiritual path, that is possibly one of the hardest things, to do. I mean, they're all challenging paths, but, especially those of you who are solopreneurs or, founders, consultants, experts, creatives, on you're kind of the main thing to make everything happen, the main person to do all the things. It is, I've often said, it's like, some days I feel like I'm in a freaking blender because it just mixes everything up. And it's like, you can't just keep doing things the way you've always done them. It's constant change. It's constant growth. It's constant evolvement. It's constant having to look at your darkest fears and demons come up right in your face, almost every day. Yeah. So it's how do you deal with them? And that's where the spiritual tools, the alignment piece comes in. How do you stay centered and aligned? How do you stay being the eye of the hurricane when everything around you is so uncertain and chaotic? So it's definitely not for the faint of heart, but I feel like the people that do it, it's they're the leaders of our generation. They're the leaders of our time right now. And that's what we need, is people digging in deeper, to leaning into their deeper purpose, to put themselves out there in the world with their gifts, their unique gifts. That's what's coming out. And for me, as I have been forced, which I've chosen as a path, to put myself out there more and more, I'm learning how to be of more and more service to people in the world. And that's typically, as you know, I work with purpose-driven and heart-centered, mostly women who are looking to make the world a better place. So it starts with us, right? When we heal ourselves, it's exponential. It heals, it helps, it spreads. It's like it helps the people in your family, in your community, in your network. And then it goes out and out from there. So it's truly when you heal yourself, you are healing the world.
Yeah. And what you're saying about using business as an opportunity to connect to your own spirituality, to connect to your own emotional growth work and healing, and then also as an opportunity to live more into your life purpose and to serve. That's how business can become a spiritual path. And the visibility piece, I mean, it's cracking me up hearing you say all this, because you've watched me the past year facing and being confronted with, okay, I didn't see this emotional issue coming. I didn't see this trigger coming. And then when you're living into, at least for me, business as a spiritual path and business as a way to serve, it isn't about me anymore. So I want to use all of the self-absorbed issues that come up on my path to service to serve more and to get me more and more out of the way. Because for everybody watching, Heather has a really successful PR agency. She was and does work with celebrities behind the scenes all the time. What had you switch from your behind the scenes, putting other people into the limelight as your A game, into that is more like your B game, and now you're putting yourself on the forefront as your A game? What had you pivot?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess it was about 5 years ago now that my last living grandparent passed away. My grandmother, who was one of my best friends. And so that was a deep journey of grief and loss. And it hit me very hard. And I, at that point had been doing the PR agency life and, supporting very high profile people and, big companies and events. And I just felt like at that time that I wanted to do something more with my gifts. I had stayed behind the scenes and in the shadows for 2 decades. It was always about the client. It's not about me. It's not about me. But really, that was just a safe way for me not to have to put myself out there in the world in a bigger way, to stay playing small and in the shadows and behind the scenes. And so when I realized that I could help more people, that's when I started my PR Stars and launched my online programs. And that's when I realized, because the first instinct was like, okay, I'll do that, but I'm not going to do video or photos or anything. I'll stay behind the scenes and do that. But as anyone here who knows the online business world, that is not how it works. You have got to be front and center. No one is going to tell your story and present yourself better than you. So it is about stepping out, putting your photos on your website, doing video, connecting with people on a regular basis so that they know that you exist. They can, they know what you have to offer and they can hire you. So, I will say, like, that was the big turning point. And so I kind of jumped off the cliff and said, I'm going to do this. And if I hadn't, sometimes the ignorance is bliss thing is so true in business. Like, if I had known what I know now, like that I would have had to do all of this stuff, like you would never have seen me doing like a video interview like this, a few years ago. I was like, oh no, someone else can do the interview. In all my years doing, high profile like publicity work, I have very few pictures and video of me because I just always push my clients in front of the camera so I could stay behind. I have one interview on a TV station here from a show called SoCal Connected, where I talked about Oscar campaigning. The only reason I did it, I did not want to do it, was because my client couldn't go. So I had to rally up and go on camera, on TV in the LA market. And it was terrifying. But the thing is, this is where the alignment piece again comes in. It's like the fears are always going to come up in life, no matter what, especially when you're wanting to play bigger in the world and put yourself out there in a bigger way. So that's where I have learned, like on the front lines between myself, working in the healing arts, having so many clients over the years that I supported into the spotlight, now helping, women in business, consultants and creatives do it for themselves. Like I know what comes up. So that's why I'm doing, and this is a great segue, I guess, to talk about, that's why I'm doing my visibility activation coming up, where over 3 days, we're going to start with this first piece of what does come up and how do you shift it? How do you have the mindset and the alignment so that you can get to the other side of your big vision and your dreams and your goals for your life and your business? Because if we don't tackle these things first, you can implement all the strategies that you want in the world, but you're often going to come back to the drawing board over and over again. So that is, I know you asked earlier too about the alignment piece. Like it is, the number one thing that we start with. And that's why I have it as such a heavy focus in what I do. And also from a marketing perspective, I do know that is my core differentiator, right? So if you're in business, you're putting yourself out there in the world, you have to know what sets you apart. So I don't know of any other person that is doing exactly what I'm doing on the planet in the way that I'm doing it. So really leaning in to all of the things that do make you unique and special. And sometimes it is your biggest heartbreak and the things that you would never think people are going to want to hear about or care about. But because I went on a healing journey and a spiritual path, those are the clients that want to work with me because they want to do publicity and visibility from more of a spiritual, heart-centered place because it feels better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So you've got, what are the 3 days? What are the pieces in your upcoming event? And we've got the link for you right here in the description of the video.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to look at what comes up for, what's your visibility vision and your money goals? Like, where are you wanting to be? What are the things that are coming up and shifting those? And then actually, like, what's the action plan? Where are you going to go after these 3 days? And what are you going to start implementing into your business? So this is, heavily going to be on the frequency activation side of the alignment piece, but we're also going to be giving information. I'll be sharing, what are the things that you want to be focusing on in your business to get the visibility. So which, leads to the dream press, getting, featured in the media, right? Getting a bigger audience, getting more qualified leads of the right people who want to hire you for your services or your work. So really like digging into all of that. Growing your audience is a big one I hear from people. Is people are often plateaued and stuck with their current network. And that's like, well, how do I get beyond that? How do I reach more people? And how do I get a better online presence? So as you know, those are the things that we work on.
Yeah. And my favorite part about working with you is getting aligned with the vision and getting beyond, again, like that self-absorbed, fear-based filter that we can be listening through and seeing through on the path. And anybody watching that's thinking, oh, I can't do that. If you've got a big dream, if you've got gifts and purpose, and you know that it's in you to go make a bigger difference in the world, this is a great opportunity. It's a free event to kind of flirt with some possibility for yourself, because I believe if you've got the vision, you've got what it takes to go and make that vision real. And when you do make that vision real, you're changing the world. And why not you? So anybody that's thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do it, why not you? I believe you can. Do you have anything to add to that, Heather?
Yeah, I love that. And that was another thing that just came up this last couple of days. I was talking to someone else, and her initial, when we first started talking, her initial response was, well, why me? And then by the end of our, interaction, it was like, why not me? So that's probably the biggest shift that anyone could experience in, coming in connection with me for this work. And, wherever you go after that, as long as you have that internal shift, it's going to change things for you in the trajectory of your business, your career, your work.
Yeah. And I want everyone to hear today that business doesn't have to be separate, back to the Chinese medicine philosophy, from you. It is you. And business can be a spiritual experience, just like every aspect of your life. Any final thoughts, Heather, on business and healing?
Oh gosh. Well, I just commend any of you who have chosen to grow and your spiritual path to be through your business. And what I will say, as someone who's been, an entrepreneur for over 2 decades now, and, a quote I love that I love it, I live by it, I love to share it, is don't quit before the miracle. Because I know that some days can be rougher than others. And you're so close. You're on your way. It's happening, whether you realize it or not. You've set the ball in motion. You've got your vision, your intentions. So just keep putting that one foot in front of the other. And anytime you start to spin out, just come back to that present moment and feel the inner peace that is there for you. Just forget all of the chaos happening outside of you and find something to love and be grateful for in that moment. And just, it's how you respond. So call upon your tools, your toolbox. If you don't have tools, then it's time to get some. So whether that's meditation or journaling or having a mentor or a coach or a healer or a teacher or someone you can lean into when you are struggling, someone that can teach you how to handle these situations, it's the most important thing you can do for yourself and your life and your family and all of those who love you.
I love it. And, another thing you say that I love is to expect the miracles.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing too. When the women in my community say another unexpected win, and I always say, well, I expect them, because it's really like when you say yes to doing the visibility work, you're not saying yes to, publicity. You're saying yes to yourself. You're saying yes to the universe, that I'm leaning deeper into my purpose. I want to be of service in the world for the people who need me. And when you do that, that just the universe rises up to meet you. You fall into flow, unexpected opportunities for success, money, income generating opportunities, awareness, exposure, like they all start to come in because you're actually walking in, you're claiming it and then you're walking in it. And the universe is like, oh, yeah, she's serious. Okay, let's bring it.
Yeah. Yeah. And healing is a spiritual path and it can apply to business as well. Heather, how do people get in touch with you in general?
Yeah, well, anyone that feels like they're resonating with anything I've said today, you can always feel free to just drop me an email at heather@prstars.net. And we have a community on Facebook as well. So I think you were going to put that link here in the group, which is the Shine Strategy Insiders Facebook community. And we actually do things over there. I give you, alignment, inspiration, and guidance. And we even monitor media opportunities if this is, you think, something that you might want to explore. And I'm out there on all the platforms. My site is prstars.net. You can find me on Instagram at heather.burgett. So anywhere you want to connect, I would love to just meet you and hear what's going on in your world.
Thank you so much for being here today. And for all of you watching, if you want to join me in the Healing is Possible hot seat, reach out, message me. Healing is possible and it starts with you and it can start right now. Thanks again, Heather. We will see you all soon.